सो गुड इवनिंग लिसनर्स। लोगों के अलग अलग शौक होते हैं और कोई पैसे कलेक्ट करता है, कोई बहुत पुराने पेंटिंग्स कलेक्ट करते हैं विच फेच देम मिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स या करोड़ों रुपए। बट देयर आर फ्यू पीपल जो पैशनेटली चीजें कलेक्ट करते हैं बिकॉज दे वांट टू स्टे कनेक्टेड विद द हिस्ट्री ऑफ दोज आइटम्स, एंड नॉट ओनली द हिस्ट्री ऑफ द आइटम्स बट ऑल्सो टू प्रिडिक्ट कि फ्यूचर में आइटम्स की क्या शेप होगी। और मेरी खुशकिस्मती है कि मैं एक ऐसे ही व्यक्ति से कांटेक्ट में रिसेंटली आया हूं जिनका नाम है डॉक्टर आदित्य विज। और डॉक्टर विज इज इन दिल्ली और ये बहुत यूनिक आइटम्स कलेक्ट करते हैं। तो आई वाज ड्रॉन टुवर्ड्स हिज कलेक्शन बिकॉज ही कलेक्ट्स मैच बॉक्सेस। He's got probably one of the biggest collection of watches, clocks, and timepieces, maybe in India. Or maybe in the world, I don't know, but he's been covered by reputable magazines, his stories on YouTube with some great channels, and I was amazed. And so I contacted him और मैंने पूछा भाई ये क्या आपको ये क्या आकर्षित करता है? And it's a labor of love. तो मुझे जब मैं डॉक्टर आदित्य विज की से कांटेक्ट किया, सो आई थॉट आई वाज गेटिंग इन टच विद समबडी लाइक नेक चंद, जिन्होंने चंडीगढ़ का रॉक गार्डन बनाया था। एंड ही वाज आल्सो एंगेज्ड इन अ वेरी lonely task of collecting, giving shape, creating the sculptures. And I would like to introduce Dr. Aditya Vij to you. Hello, doctor. कैसे हैं आप?
Good morning, good evening, whatever is a good time at the other end. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I think it's a great pleasure to actually be talking and connecting with your audience.
It's our pleasure, क्योंकि हम especially for me, क्योंकि मैं भी एक amateur lover हूँ of old items. You know, I've got a few cameras और थोड़े projectors हैं मेरे पास, 8mm 16mm के projectors हैं मेरे पास। उसमें कभी-कभी मैं फिल्में मिल जाती हैं तो मैं चला के घर में अकेले बैठ के देखता हूँ उनको। And of course, when I was younger, I would steal menu cards from restaurants in Pune. So I had a huge collection, but the condition was that I had to steal them. अभी तो सारा कुछ online हो गया, लेकिन coming back to you, because you've reached a different level of that madness. तो ये कहाँ से शुरू हुआ?
So see, I think I would I would definitely label it as madness because it's something which is which can only be done if you are madly in love with it. And I say that I'm madly in love with it because as I've grown up, I've realized that the history that we have been seeing or the history that we have been actually exposed to is extremely limited. Mm-hmm. And probably the world moves around thinking that Google or Wikipedia has everything. But the truth is that Google and Wikipedia perhaps have only about 10% to 15% of the information. The balance 85% of the information or the history never got recorded, never got penned down, never got in or came into existence. So my love out of all these things actually started by in the kind of discovering what was never written, what was never told. What was the unrecorded history? Just to give you a small example, because since we started with the Matchbox story, now if you actually Google the history of matchboxes, or if you actually try and find out how matchboxes evolved, what matchboxes did, who made matchboxes, where and how did matchboxes travel, the information is so sketchy that you will just be over with it in 15 minutes. And the fact of the story is, if you actually look at the ground reality, if you actually see how important was a matchbox barely about 50 years back in India also, it will shock you, because without a matchbox, I did not have food. Without a matchbox, I did not have light in my house. Without a matchbox, I could not travel. Without a matchbox, I was unsafe in 90% of the rural areas in India. So, as a matter of fact, it was one of the most revered products when even till about 50, 60 years ago. And as a matter of fact, the kings and a lot of people actually realized it. That is why if you actually scroll through the history of India, you will come across hundreds of matchboxes which had all the kings, all the prince and everybody's marks on the matchbox. The labels were with the prince and the kings. And the reasons were very simple. No recorded history, but the fact of the story is कि we got matchboxes made in England, in Japan, and in Sweden, brought them into India and distributed into the masses.
Okay.
That महाराज की कृपा से आपके घर में खाना है, महाराज की कृपा से आपके घर में रोशनी है. So it is that interesting a story, and nobody's ever managed to think. I think by my rough estimates, there were more than about a lakh and a half different matchbox labels which must have existed in India.
Wow. Okay.
And with my best of the efforts and with my connect with all the other guys who are interested in philonomy, I don't think we even know more than about 30,000 labels. The balance 70 or 80,000 has never been even known.
So matchbox collection it's got a name. You said philonomy.
Yeah, it's got philonomy.
Wow. Okay. Every day is a school day. So अच्छा मुझे नहीं पता था philonomy कहते हैं इसे. Fascinating. So what is the oldest matchbox that you have? और ये कहाँ पे कहानी शुरू हुई? You said कि आपके father साहब ने आपको ये interest डाला matchboxes का.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that is my first collection. As a kid, I still hold that album which I made with my father when I was 8 years old. And 40 years down the line, that album is still preserved and kept with me. Because what he would do is he would go on his walks, because that was very normal in those times, 45 years back. So he would take me along with in his walk, and he would tell me to collect matchboxes on the way. Because matchboxes were quite easy. Everybody was carrying a matchbox at that point of time. So we would collect matchboxes, we would come back, and every weekend when it was an off day for him, he would sit with me, he would categorize it with me, that let's put the animals one side, let's put the transportational ones one side, let's put the monuments one side, let's put the plants one side.
Beautiful.
So we used to categorize it, cut it, and paste it in an album.
Wow.
So that album, as I said, I still hold that album as my childhood memory 40 years down the line. And from there, it actually grew when I actually restarted collecting about 8 years back. That is when I actually gave it a full-fledged shot. Then I was out and out to get whatever, whenever, however I could get it.
So एक जो आपने जब भी collect करनी शुरू करी ये matchbox covers, तो उसमें what is the oldest matchbox that you have? Are they dated? आपको कैसे पता है कि भाई ये नई है, पुरानी है? वो कैसे पता लगता है?
Okay. So the oldest one I would have would be somewhere around the early 1910 or 1912s.
Okay.
So about 110-year-old matchboxes I have. And it is a marvel in itself that they're still preserved and they're still available. And I only thank some madman like me, perhaps, in that era who actually preserved something and kept it.
What is the history of matchboxes? ये कभी शुरू हुई थी और ये portable कभी बनी?
The history of matchboxes, if you look at it, starts in about 1820, 1825, when there were experiments with trying to create fire out of different chemicals.
Okay.
And Lucifer, that's a very interesting word name which is there. So Lucifer is credited with actually finding out or creating a matchbox which was there. But matchboxes were still difficult because they managed to make the stick with the chemical on the tip, but the rubbing surface and the lighting was still difficult because the chemical would either fall off or the chemical would not happen with the rubbing surface. So till about 1850s, a carry-away matchbox was still not available. But then they managed to do that. They managed to actually create a matchstick which they could strike against a rubbing surface and create fire out of it. So in about 1850s, they actually managed to start creating it. It started becoming a household item in about 1870s.
In England or in India also?
No, I'm talking about the European story. In India, they actually came in about 1885, 1888. Okay. The first matchbox factory in India came up in Gujarat in about 1888. But for a very, very long period of time, all we were doing we were making the matchsticks and we were making the match boxes. we did not have the printing technology available in India. So to print, we would send the design or the picture back to Europe, where the labels were printed in either in UK or in Switzerland, in Sweden, or in Japan.
Okay.
So these three, and Austria as well. Fourth country was Austria, and Sweden became the hub of matchbox manufacturing.
Wow. Okay.
So you can actually, if you go back to the vintage matchbox labels, you can actually see printed in Austria, printed in Sweden, printed in Japan, and brought into India. And all of them had Indian designs. You would find Lord Shiva, you would find Ganesh Ji's, you would find Shiv Parvati matchboxes in abundance.
Okay.
From that era.
तो दिखाओ हमें, अगर आप दिखा सकते हो कोई मैच.
I can. I think I should have one here for sure. Just give me 1 second.
तो कितने मैचबॉक्स कवर्स हैं आपके पास में?
सर मेरे पास मैचबॉक्स कवर्स एंड मैचबॉक्सेस मिला के, though I don't have the exact count, but I'm definitely close to about 20,000.
Wow.
So I have about 20,000 different matchboxes and matchbox covers in my collection. I have one file here with me. Let me try and show you. I'll switch over the camera to the other side.
Yes.
Here it is. Now, if you see, the first one that I see here, you see that is the undivided India.
और ये कितने की है?
This is 6 पैसा.
6 पैसे की. और ये अनडिवाइडेड इंडिया है. और इससे शिवकाशी में बनी है, जहाँ पे पटाखे बनते हैं अभी.
बिल्कुल. So this is something which is there. Now, if you see, this is the matchbox which is there. Again, it's 6 paisa. This is around the Second World War.
Okay.
So you have that coming through. You have another one which is of the British Raj, undivided India. So as you were asking, how do you know which one is from which era? So this is what actually gives you the idea about which era is it. Now, if you look at this is the actor Rajkumar.
Okay, Madras.
So you had actors, so you know exactly when actors were. If you see this is a telephone.
Okay, so ये पुराना telephone का है.
Exactly, this is the Purana telephone, so you know exactly when it is. As a matter of fact, I have this phone here as well.
Beautiful.
So I have this phone here as well, which is from that era.
Okay.
And let me show you a phone as well, which is here. Again, this is a 1944.
1944.
Yeah.
So जो हमारे जवान viewers हैं, उनको तो ये पता भी नहीं होगा कि इसको मिलाते कैसे हैं, वो डायल कैसे करते हैं.
Yesterday I heard my daughter's friend here. She was like so amazed to see how do you talk. So let me show it as well. So this is how it used to be. This is where you had to lift and speak into. This is what would go onto your ear.
Earpiece. Okay.
So this is how it is. You would get this to here, and you would have to speak into this, and this is how you dialed.
1940s, eh?
This is 1944 to be very precise, and this was made by Siemens. You can see it here.
Oh, okay. So Siemens in India या बाहर से आई थी?
बाहर से. This is Siemens made in London. It reads Siemens London.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
और आज की डेट में Siemens doesn't manufacture any.
Not manufacturing. So this is a vintage camera. You can see again. This is 1930s. So, like this is being manufactured in London again.
Watson and
you can see Watson and Sons manufactured in London, and the agents in India for selling it.
अच्छा, Babaji Sakharam and Company, Bombay.
Yeah. So this is was sold in 1930s.
Wow.
So chapter.
Watches and clocks.
Okay, you want to have let me start. Taking you through a little bit of the watches and the clock story. Now, what I collect as watches and clocks is only and only the manual clocks. When I say the manual clocks, means clocks which have the chabi wala system.
वाइंड करने के लिए जो होती
The winding ones. So this is what my house starts looking like.
है. ये सारे इकट्ठे बोलते तो नहीं अलार्म कभी?
Luckily, you have to wind them so they are in your control.
Let's take a break and we'll come back.
इंसाफ कर दो, मुझे माफ कर दो, इतना ही कर दो करम. दिल दे दिया है तुम्हें देंगे, जुदा नहीं करेंगे. आवारगी में बन गया दीवाना, मैंने क्यों सादगी को नहीं जाना. आवारगी में बन गया दीवाना, मैंने क्यों.
सुमन माथुर कह रही हैं कि बाबा आदम के ज़माने का ख़जाना. उससे भी पहले का लगता है मुझे. समृता सरकार कह रही है अमेजिंग, दीज आर लाइक रिपोजिटरीज ऑफ कल्चरल ट्रेंड्स एंड टाइम्स, लाइक हिस्टोरियंस कुड यूज दीज एज प्राइमरी सोर्सेज. सो ट्रू. पूजा सेजवाल इज अमेज्ड कि 20,000 माचिस की डिबियाँ के कवर्स हैं उनके पास में. एंड सुमन माथुर कह रही हैं कि ग्रेट टू लर्न अबाउट द कम्प्लेक्सिटीज एंड प्रोसेसेस इन्वॉल्व इन द मेकिंग ऑफ मैच बॉक्सेस अ सेंचुरी अगो. एब्सोल्युटली. एंड पूजा सेजवाल कह रही हैं कि उनके पास भी माचिस की डिब्बियों का कलेक्शन था, लेकिन उनके पास 100 थी. तो या यू स्टिल गॉट अबाउट 19,900 एंड 900 टू गो. ममता जी कह रही हैं नाइस कलेक्शन आदित्य जी. एब्सोल्युटली. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका. थैंक यू फॉर दिस. लेट्स गो टू द सेकेंड पार्ट ऑफ द discussion. So welcome back, listeners. We had that little technical break with Aditya. Aditya is an antiquarian. He's a collector of weird items like matchboxes, and I believe there's a name for matchbox collection. और हम उनकी घड़ियों की बात कर रहे थे. And he was giving us a tour when we lost his signal. तो सबसे पुरानी घड़ी कौन सी है आपके पास में आदित्य?
Okay. The oldest watch that I have is about 1912 or 1913 living with. Okay, here I am.
Clock room में अभी हम लोग आपके. So
this is my clock room.
We are in Dr. Aditya Vij's clock room. कितनी घड़ियां हैं आपके?
Yes. I have about 1,300 watches, clocks, and table clocks put together approximately.
1,300. Wow.
And the good part of them is that I would say out of 1,300, 1,280 for sure are the winding clocks.
Okay.
I have a couple of automatic ones as well.
Okay.
And one odd cell one as well, but those I have kept only because of their design dot. So as I said, my clock.
Earliest clock, Aditya, कभी आया?
Here.
अच्छा, ये कौन सा है?
That's a Napoleon clock.
Mm-hmm.
That is made in England.
Mm-hmm.
Again sold in Bombay through an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And is dated around 1912.
1912. Wow.
Yeah.
Does it work?
And luckily it still works.
Wow. Excellent.
Yeah. So in this room, I have about 180 clocks on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you to the my small museum studio across the road where I have actually the other clocks.
Mm-hmm.
So just allow me 1 minute to walk you across. It's a 1 minute walk.
Yep.
In the meanwhile, I can just brief you about what, as I said, the interesting factor in the watches and why I collect them is that if you actually open up a manual clock,
Mm-hmm.
and if you actually see a manual clock, the intricate machinery inside that clock is so amazing that I don't think anybody can possibly make that today.
अभी दुनिया में वो जो वॉच रिपेयरर्स थे वो भी एक प्रोफेशन खत्म हो रहा है अभी.
खत्म हो गया. I have only got two guys. As a matter of fact, the gentleman who repairs my watches is about 83 years old.
Okay.
And nobody else actually even understands how to repair that watch or what to do with that watch happening. Okay, I'm there in my studio. I'm just turning the camera around. There.
In pieces. Oh, table. Wow.
So these are some wall clocks here as well. And these are my table clock collection.
Wow. और ये भी what is the age of these? कोई दिखाओ जो favorite है आपकी.
Oh, sir, that's a difficult question because I actually don't have preferences in them. For me, anything which is old is of great interest. But there are some very, very beautiful pieces. As I said, there are made from different countries. I think there are pieces which I have, which are from about 13 different countries in here. And if you actually hear the stories, the smuggling stories in India have been all about these because they were banned in India in the sense that you couldn't import them into India. And we had to actually smuggle them. So, like, this is a beautiful piece. That's a Russian vintage piece.
Okay. Wow.
So this is from Russia. This is from the US. This is an Ansonia, which is there. This is a West Clocks, which is from UK. This is a Fevaluba, which is from France.
And Ansonia was the preferred option in India at that time, I think.
See, India, it wasn't that Ansonia was preferred. We had the Big Bens and the Ansonias as the maximum ones because the Britishers brought in and the Americans always saw it as a market where they could sell. And they were allies of the Britishers. Therefore, we always had the Ansonias and the Big Bens, which were in preference. Then the German and the Swiss clocks started walking in. And then in around 1970s, late 1960s, 70s and 80s, the Japanese took over.
The Seikos and the Rados and...
Yeah, exactly. That is when the Japanese took over the watch market and the Japanese started rolling it.
And automatics आने शुरू हो गई थी उस time.
Exactly. So if you want, I can actually walk you through this. Yeah.
Cameras, ये cameras दिखाने वाले थे आप हमें. You've got a large camera.
Let me walk you through the other place first. Let me walk you through with the typewriters first.
Okay.
That is my typewriter room.
So all the Remingtons and और कौन से brands थे उस time पे?
Oh, sir, plenty of them. That is what is the most interesting story. The Remington is only one of them.
Yes.
Here is a Remington, you see. You had the Brothers, you had the Olympias, you had Electras, you had Smith Kronas, you have Sinvintech, you had Halda, which was a Swedish model. You had Erika, which was a German one. You had Royal,
okay,
the British ones. You had the Hermes.
Hermes, yes, of course. We used to have a Hermes. My father.
Yeah, you had the Olivettis.
Yeah, Olivetti तो बहुत recently तक they were producing electronic type.
Yeah, you had the Underwoods. You had the Godrej.
Good old Indian, made in India. Yep.
Yeah, the only typewriter made in India. Actually, two of them. We had only two companies able to manufacture typewriters in India. One was Godrej and the second one was Jayco.
Okay.
So, and their typewriter used to be called the JK.
Okay.
So only two companies made typewriters in India. Rest everything was brought in. And so this is my typewriter room.
Wow. So kitne typewriters?
And I have got 200 typewriters in my collection.
Beautiful.
So this is where I actually, and I should also show you my fan here.
हाँ, ये
This
किस कंट्री
is
का है?
this is a fan from 1920s,
Okay.
and it still works, and it still actually works better than most of the fans that I've seen working today.
That's 100-year-old fan.
Exactly.
Wow. और
And
बड़ी
it
speed
still
है.
works. It still works the best. This is a British made.
Mhm. Amazing. Amazing.
Actually, all my fans in this place, in my studio, are all vintage. Let me show you another fan, which is here. This fan here.
Mhm.
Now, this fan weighs 26 kgs.
26 kilos. Wow.
Yes.
Mm.
The modern fans weigh about 4 kilos. If I go to purchase a fan today, it weighs 4 kilos. This one weighs 26 kgs.
And this is still working. ये कितने साल का है?
This is 1930s.
1930s. Okay. उससे थोड़ा जवान है दूसरे से.
Yeah.
बड़ी तंदुरुस्त है, काफी.
And look at the
speed तो बढ़िया
the speed that it still works with, the soundless situation that it still has.
Wow. Old is gold.
Absolutely. And this place has some other clocks of mine as well.
Okay, fantastic. Cameras दिखाओ.
Okay.
अभी.
Cameras, okay. Let's.
Oh, I'm losing you. Let me take a. Yeah, I'll stop the recording. I'll come back when your signal is better. I'm getting some interesting comments. और समृता सरकार, I'm sorry, I haven't thought of this. तो वो पूछ रही कि जो keyboards हैं, is the letter layout persistent or does it change? I think they might be the same. ये क्योंकि बहुत पुराना एक QWERTY जो keyboard था, but I could be wrong totally. So yeah, and unfortunately क्योंकि Aditya is not here, so I can't tell you what. And Pooja Sejwal saying, oh my God, to see this amazing collection. And Suman Mathurji has seen a Hermes typewriter at home, as have I. Yeah, so I've used a typewriter. Yeah, I've practiced on a typewriter for days. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. और आज अगर मेरे typing skills keyboard पे अच्छे हैं, तो it's thanks to that time. I used to write letters to the newspaper अपने पुराने typewriter पर. Yeah, so आज की जो नस्ल है उनको पता भी ना होगा कि भाई ये क्या है. आप देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं कहते सुनते विद मनबीर सिंह कोहली. मैं ये थोड़ी सी स्ट्रॉन्ग सीलिंग्स फॉर अ 26 किलो फैन, दैट रियली अमेज्ड मी कि 26 किलो का फैन, और वो दोनों पंखे बड़े प्यार से चल रहे थे, मधुर, कोई आवाज़ नहीं थी उसमें. दे वर रनिंग सो स्मूथली. मैं थोड़ी सी म्यूज़िक लगाता हूँ, फिर लास्ट पार्ट लेके आता हूँ मैं, एंड इट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग लास्ट पार्ट. उसमें वो कैमरा दिखाने वाले हैं और वो कैमरे के अंदर, या सो इट्स इंटरेस्टिंग. सो लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दैट. सो लिसनर्स, हम लोग हैं डॉक्टर आदित्य विज के सेल्फ डिजाइन म्यूजियम में, एंड नाउ वी आर इन हिज कैमरा रूम, क्योंकि इसके पहले थोड़ा टेक्निकल इश्यूज आ रहे था इंटरनेट पर. सो हाँ, कैमरास थोड़े दिखाओ एंड देन वील थैंक यू फॉर दैट.
Okay, so this is my camera room, and I have about 850 cameras in here. 850,
wow.
All the 850 cameras are actually vintage ones. When I went time, so I have cameras which are the cameras which were the real cameras, the plate cameras which were the TLC cameras, the twin lens cameras, and cameras which were the instant click shot camera.
मैं यहाँ पर ज़रा वीडियो रोक दिया मैंने, क्योंकि अगर आपको फोटोग्राफी का शौक है तो ये सेक्शन ज़रूर देखिएगा, बिकॉज ही इज़ गोइंग टू शो अस अ प्लेट कैमरा. तो कैसे 1880 में फोटोग्राफी की जाती थी कि भाई प्लेट कैमरा के साथ. सो उसको देखिएगा कैसे लोड करा जाता था. ही इज गोइंग टू गिव अस अ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन. डोंट गो एनीवेयर.
So my oldest camera is from 1880.
1880.
Yeah.
वंडर किसकी फोटोज
That
नहीं.
is
1880 वाला दिखाओ यार.
1880 wala camera. Here it is. I have to figure out where. Let me take it out and show you.
वाओ. तो इसमें फिल्म
This
पड़ती
is,
थी क्या पड़ता था?
Sorry?
It didn't have film, right?
No, these are plate cameras.
Yes.
You have to fix a plate in here.
Uh-huh.
So you would fix a plate. I'll show you a plate if you want.
Please.
1 second. Just let me get a plate for you.
तो listeners, ये 1880 का कैमरा है. 1880. Can you imagine? And it didn't take a film, and of course this required a plate. तो हर बार जब भी फोटो खींचनी है उसके पीछे प्लेट लगाओ पहले, फिर उसकी फ्लैश, आई थिंक फ्लैश इसकी बाहर हुआ करती थी ना, एक्सटर्नल फ्लैश.
ये फ्लैश नहीं होता था. फ्लैश तब तक इन्वेंट ही नहीं हुए थे.
अच्छा.
Okay, so this is a plate, sir, and this plate would get fixed here like this.
Okay.
And what you did is, once you had the setting done, which means that you had set up the camera in terms of, 1 second, I'll open it up for you.
Yep. Okay.
So you open the bellow.
Accordion, huh?
Yeah, and you would set the lens.
Yes.
Then you would fix the plate
Okay.
here. Then you would fix the plate here.
Uh-huh.
And what you did with the plate was that once it was ready, you would lift this for exposure.
Ah, okay.
So like fitted like this, you would lift the plate. And once the exposure was done, you would close it. And now this plate was sent for developing.
कहाँ जाती थी? इंग्लैंड जाया करती थी या क्या?
England, as a matter of fact, yes. In India, you had to actually wait for about 4 to 5 months to actually receive your picture.
ये millennials को मत बताना. They will never be able to handle it. परेशान.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody thinks photography is very easy until they actually realize what photography meant barely 100 years ago.
Absolutely. Or abhi you couldn't do a selfie with this.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Okay.
amazing, Aditya. And
That's my telephone exchange.
ठीक है. One day I'd like to come to Delhi and maybe visit you. And are you going to open this for the general public? Charge a ticket? Or not?
So the situation is that I usually allow people to come in and have a look.
Okay.
It depends on that. I should see that a person is genuinely interested, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. So I allow people to come in and have a look and do that. So anybody who I see is genuinely interested, I'm game to letting them come and see.
It's amazing. Aditya, thank you very much. और एक छोटा सा मुझे आपके साथ ये एनेक्डोट शेयर करना था. बहुत पुरानी बात है, आज से 10-15 साल पुरानी बात है. मैं सिडनी में जा रहा था कहीं से, तो वहाँ पे एक खूबसूरत बुक स्टोर है, अभी भी है वो. तो मैं वहाँ पे गया तो एक किताब थी, और किताब बड़ी कलरफुल थी. तो आई वेंट टू इट एंड इट वाज द आर्ट वर्क ऑफ द इंडियन फायर क्रैकर्स. पटाखों के जो कवर्स होते हैं ना, आप देखिए उसके ऊपर वो भगवान की फोटो बनी होती है, लक्ष्मी, दिस दैट,
Exactly.
कलरफुल. तो इट वाज एन एंटायर बुक which reproduced a lot of the artwork of the firecrackers. And
as a matter of fact, so you'll be surprised. The largest collector in India that we have, I'm sure you might be knowing him, Mr. Tarun Thakra.
Yeah.
Who has the camera, who has the car, the Heritage Museum. I was with him the other day and we were discussing exactly this, that nobody bothered to save the firecracker wrappers. Let's start and try doing that.
I'm sorry, but somebody's beaten you. There's already a Westerner who's written a book which I have seen. So I'm sure आपको कहीं ना कहीं मिल
Okay.
जाएगी किताब. तो yeah, but
Mhm.
look, art जो इंडिया का है, चाहे आप मूवी पोस्टर्स हैं, जो मूवी के बड़े बड़े बैनर्स हुआ करते थे. I have a
Yeah.
family member whose father
Mhm.
used to paint those posters. याद है वो सिनेमा
Mhm.
हॉल्स के बाहर जो बड़े बड़े पोस्टर्स
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
तो वो पेंटर्स पेंट किया करते थे. तो वो हमारी फैमिली में है. तो वो एक अलग आर्ट
Oh wow.
डेड which is dead.
बिल्कुल.
I mean, of course वो उन्होंने
True.
बंद कर दिया और वो कुछ और करते हैं. But yeah, so that is all great art that we have lost. But thank you for preserving our heritage. I think you are doing a great service to our culture, popular culture, and of course the technology culture. And I wish you all the best. I wish I could go on and on. Otherwise, this would turn into a 5-hour session. Thank you, Aditya.
I think we can wrap up. Let me quickly show you my last room. We missed it out. I thought I'll take you there as well.
Mhm.
That is my vintage tin box collection room.
Biscuits ke dabbe.
So biscuit, mithaiyan, everything.
Yes, beautiful.
So this is what makes me one of the largest tin box collectors in the country. There are about 1300, 1400 tin boxes which are there.
Fantastic. और इसमें कई हाउस
And-
वाइफ्स के कैश कलेक्शंस भी छुपे होंगे कई बार.
I know. I keep bumping into, and they're very interesting stories. Matlab, there are unending stories with this which keep happening because I get people from different companies who come up and are like surprised. Acha, we also used to make this.
You'll surprise
So-
many. Yeah. Thank you.
So they come and they have no clue that their company used to do this. They used to manufacture these things. These were the versions which were there. So it's a never-ending story.
Amazing. I hope we can connect with you in future. आप अपना ख्याल रखिए. Thank you very much for doing this and look after yourself. Okay. All the best.
Thank you so much, sir.
Cheers.
Thank you.
सो ये एक अनोखा सा इंटरव्यू था और आपको सैर भी करा दी मैंने दिल्ली में आदित्य विज के वहाँ. बहुत सारे लोग एंड ऑफ कोर्स आज बड़ा शुभ दिन है. आज रेखा राजवंशी जी भी इस कार्यक्रम में शी हैज़ जॉइंड अस एंड शी इज़ अमेज्ड एट दैट कलेक्शन. एंड रेखा राजवंशी, एज यू नो, इज़ अ poet in Sydney and she's a published author and she's so she does a lot of other kind of work too. मेरा नाम है मनबीर सिंह कोहली और ये कार्यक्रम है कहते सुनते, जो कि हर थर्सडे नाइट को आता है 8 से 10 बजे तक. और हम लोग फेसबुक पर वी कैन डू इट एनी टाइम. सो 8 से 10, उसके बाद भी 10-15 मिनट. और आज वी विल बी गोइंग स्लाइटली ओवर टाइम ऑन